And we're bringing in now NewsNation chief, Washington anchor, and host of On Balance, Leland Vittert. Leland, thanks for making the time. And I do want to start with President Biden speaking on the phone with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. What do we know about that conversation and about this wider moment where we are seeing a new stage, a new level of intensity from Israel?
I think the big issue here is how long the lockstep support of the United States lasts, because as your guest just pointed out, the Palestinians are increasing their rhetoric about how bad things are getting in Gaza. No doubt Gaza is a terrible place to be. The question becomes, does the United States start to either publicly or privately pressure the Israelis to pull back? And we've seen sort of allusions to that from the Biden administration. The question is whether or not that becomes a public pressure on Israel, which would certainly change the dynamic. I think the point that needs to be made always is, yes, things are terrible for Palestinian civilians inside Gaza. There's no question about that. But your past guest just listed a huge amount of supplies that those Palestinians were missing. And we know by reporting and by evidence of how they continue to fight, that Hamas has all those, and they could provide those supplies to the Palestinian civilian population if they were more interested in the Palestinian civilian population than they were in fighting Israel.
You know, an IDF spokesperson did give us an updated number for hostages today, 239 hostages now believed to be in Gaza. Does this escalation from Israel make it more or less likely for these hostages to be released by Hamas?
It depends on how you look at the world, right? If you look at the world that negotiation with terrorists is possible and capitulation will bring results and bring what you need, then it makes it less likely. If you look at the world as that this is an organization in Hamas that, among other things, slaughtered babies, that negotiating with them and sort of giving them quarter in a time like this, or being willing to hold back, only emboldens them, then it probably makes it more likely you're going to get the hostages back, because at some level, Hamas can be beaten into submission, which is what the Israelis' goals are, and get the hostages back. No doubt, if you're a family member of one of these hostages, this is a horrible, horrible time. We've said from the beginning that the idea of getting the majority of these hostages back alive is one that seems unlikely. And I think that based on the way we have seen the Israelis prosecute this war, that's how they view things. We understand that this latest escalation in the ground phase was taken shortly after the Israelis sort of realized in their discussions with Hamas that getting more hostages back through diplomatic means wasn't something that was going to happen.
You know, this past Thursday, I want to ask you about a delegation from Hamas that visited Russia. Let's listen quickly to what John Kirby had to say about this trip.
This is not a time to be supporting Hamas's ability to continue to kill Israelis, and it's certainly not a time, or any nation out there that wants to be involved should look for ways to be involved to help Israel defend itself.
And meanwhile, now House Foreign Affairs Chairman McCall said today Hamas visited Putin at the Kremlin, and we are seeing now the solidification of Russia, China, and Iran all together in this. They're all allies against the West and the United States. Leland, should we be concerned about Hamas talking with Russia?
Of course. Anytime the most dangerous people in the world all get together and discuss ways to foment, further terror, it's very dangerous. And we heard from a Hamas spokesperson who was talking in Arabic about how the Russians were watching this and the Chinese had watched what had happened as well, which makes the response to this all the more, I think, important and telling. I think what you're going to watch for over the coming week is China and Russia, who both have votes on the UN Security Council, continue to push for a quote unquote ceasefire. And that's sort of what we're hearing. What's wrong with the ceasefire? Why can't we have a ceasefire? Ceasefire, because civilians are suffering. And the pushback will continue to be that the ceasefire only benefits Hamas. But watch now this week for Russia and Iran and China, all, as you rightly point out, Hamas's biggest supporters in one way or another, to push for that in order to try and put more pressure on the Israelis.
Okay, Leland Vittert, always appreciate it. We will be watching you on Balance this week. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.